So we got an election coming up June 2nd here, provincial. What's your, you reading the tea leaves?
Well, I mean, if you believe the polls, then of course Doug Ford doesn't have a problem. I mean, the polls have been wrong before, but I don't sense anything. I mean, I don't even have a lot of people talking about the election, to tell you the truth. It seems pretty quiet, and you know, I mean, you know, just it's quiet.
It is. Doug Ford seems to be keeping a low-key thing. Hard to find. Reporters are having to hunt him down. This morning I heard they're having an emergency meeting with the PC caucus. Not sure what that's all about. The other thing about the polls, people are alleging there's bots involved and that it's a lot of phone calling and stuff. It's hard to really say in this age of cynicism. These polls could be manipulated, I guess. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I mean, but you know, it's hard to get a read, and when you take a look at the signs, like when I'm looking at the signage around town, if I was just going by signs on homes that I see, it almost appears like the NDP candidate is ahead. I mean, there's you know, that young lady has a lot of signs on homes. And of course, signs on public property don't always mean very much, other than the fact that you've got, you know, you've got a good sign crew and lots of money to buy signs. But it's very interesting to me to see that she seems to be doing very well with signage. Now, I'm not in every neighborhood, obviously, but in the neighborhoods that I've seen, for example, down in the Ferris area where I live, you know, along Campbell Avenue and areas in there, and then of course in the West End, you know, if you go take Copeland Street, you know, where I went to my friend Mike's place, there's a lot of NDP signs, and you know, I would have traditionally thought the West End would not be NDP. So, I mean...
Well, Erica's had, she's been at it for about 3 years, organizing and fundraising and volunteer organizing. And she's big on knocking on doors, so I could see that, you know, help turning her way. I'm pretty sure that Vic's been busy, but he's been busy in different ways, signage-wise. I guess there's been changes in the rules for signs too, right? Public property.
Well, but that is for
just municipal.
That's for municipal.
Not provincial.
Because you see, we can't impose rules on federal or provincial elections. I mean, even you know, for example, technically, other than the fact that probably people would be upset if there were election signs on the waterfront, we really couldn't keep them off there because, quite frankly, you know, provincial and federal, you know, we can't make rules for those election campaigns.
I was wondering why there's just one of each in the different locations, at Lee Park and whatnot. Usually they're littered.
Well, I guess maybe it might even have to do with the price of signs these days.
Price of everything.
And the cost of, you know, erecting them. You know, getting back to Erica, quite frankly, I don't know who she is.
No kidding.
Yeah, but I've never, to my knowledge, I've never met her. Now, I know that, you know, speaking about Vic's door-to-door campaign, I know that, you know, on a couple of occasions with my, where my children live, that Vic has been at their doorstep. And of course, I ran into Vic just here on the street, and of course he's got his van all decked out, and you know, I was kidding him. I reminded him that the first guy to deck out a van was myself when I ran from the Liberals against Al MacDonald.
Oh, no kidding.
in that election. So
That was a recount one, eh?
yeah, the recount one, and you know, so he's got his all spruced up. The thing you have to remember with Victor is, I mean, I've known Victor for years, and he's very smart, and he's a great merchandiser. I mean, he was in the advertising business, and there's no reason, I mean, there was good reason that he was there, was because, you know, he is a good marketer, and you know, you know, and I've known him as I've known the Vraybosches for years. I mean, you know, I mean, I grew up with Tanya's dad and her Uncle Brian, who's now deceased, and knew, you know, their mother and father, and you know, their sister Maureen, and the whole gang. So it's interesting because of the candidates that are there. You know, the two, well, let's say the three real contending candidates. You know, I've got a background and know two of them very well, and in fact, I have a lot of respect for both of them, which is, you know, which is interesting. It doesn't make it necessarily easy at the polls, does it?
No, you got I think a three-way legitimate contention for various reasons, right? Did you watch the debate by chance?
No.
No, I haven't had a chance. Yeah. I'm not sure if you would have gleaned anything different than what you've just said and whatnot, but they could all hold their own to a point, but obviously Vic has a little bit of a headway with experience, you know, and he's pretty slick still.
Yeah, he's experienced. You know, I mean, I mean, just take a look at his history with the PC party.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the fact that what he's done there.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. I'm replacing Ivan today. You got anything for me to pick up or anything while I'm here?
No, I haven't. I mean, this is one of the problems. I mean, what the government gives to people on Ontario Works, you know, a single person, you know, it's as bad as the old age pension. You know, $675 in that range, and
Can't get through the month with that.
yeah, and well, I mean, they can't rent a room anymore at that, and then you wonder why there's homeless people. You know, I mean, let's face it, the finances is part of the problem, maybe not all of the problem, you know, along with the other factors, but, you know, it's very difficult.
Well, I remember when I was going to college that I rented call it a studio apartment. It wasn't much, $265 a month, I think. You could rent a room, like the first place I was on Tackleberry was just a room in a basement, and I think it was, Jesus, $60 a week, something like that. I don't know. It wasn't everything of the check, right? You still had a little bit left over. Not enough for beer, but you can get groceries and rent a room.
Yeah.
Right? It hasn't kept up.
Well, of course, I mean, food and shelter are supposed to be the two basics, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those are the two basics. I mean, it isn't that anybody needs to provide entertainment dollars, but they're not providing the basics anymore.
No.
I mean, there's just no way. It's not happening, and this is putting a lot of stress on people who already have stress in other ways. And I mean, it's only gone from bad to worse now with inflation and you know, the housing crisis that we're in, and like it's a very difficult situation.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the cure is.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, the part of the problem, and I mean, we've seen it here, is the fact that, you know, when they closed that psych hospital up the North Highway, and you know, you have a very small section at the North Bay General, And of course, you know, there was the academics in the 1990s in particular, and started in the United States, decided that institutionalizing people was really unfair. But you know, the thing about it is that you recognize that there are some people who are better suited to be institutionalized, at least if they were in sort of a boarding house, room and boarding house, with people who were skilled in assisting people with either addictions or mental health issues, to the point that there's someone there to say, you know, Dave, did you have a shower today? Have you had something to eat?
Group home.
Yeah, did you take your meds? And someone who's there to be sure that, you know, if they go out, that they at least they come back, you know, to assist them in a number of fashions. But we don't have, you know, the government doesn't want to provide funding for those kinds of services. And then when it comes to having places where people need to go for assistance, well, we don't have those either.
No, when they made that big switch, I thought there was going to be a lot more community living supports that downloaded the responsibilities kind of municipalities, but...
Well, I can tell you, I mean, I was on council all of those years when the negotiations were going on. In fact, I was chairing the North Bay Social Services Department in those days prior to the DSAT. And we sat down, and I can tell you, every stripe of government, first the Tories, then the NDP came into power, and then the Liberals came into power. We met with ministers and people from each of those administrations. They all made the same promises about support and about how they were to do this, that, and they were going to provide money for housing and the rest of it. And none of it ever happened. Now they're talking about, for example, there looks like there's going to be a treatment center built where North Bay Chrysler used to be on Lakeshore Drive. But it's essentially a private operation. And you know, you do see the signs around about privatizing healthcare. And a treatment center is certainly healthcare. Now, is that better than nothing? Yes. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say to you, oh, well, we should say, don't let them build it. Because we need a treatment center, regardless of what, you know, whether it's privatized or if it's under the hospital or whatever it happens to be. You know, we're in that situation. And I know that it's going to be publicly supported with public dollars. And I'm quite sure they're not going to be turning somebody away because, you know, whether you're homeless or not or whatever, you do have a health card. But are people who have more money going to get priority for treatment? I hope not. I haven't heard that that's going to happen. But at the same time, why couldn't these treatment centers be under the auspices of the North Bay Regional Health Center? They have a location on King Street already. You know, aren't they best equipped, and don't we already have a CAO and infrastructure for, you know, for the administrative part of that business? And couldn't we open up more boarding homes or whatever and have them still under the wing of the hospital, or and even the treatment center? Maybe it should be under the Canadian Mental Health Association. I don't know. You know,
it's a bizarre little lab experiment going on with the college system to handle the business of that and to study it, right? And you really, based on the track record, it's pretty hit and miss. as far as their initiatives go. And as far as continuation and actually making those dollars count, you're right, there's probably better ways to spend them.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, we do have private medical clinics now called meth clinics,
Yeah, and we've seen how that works.
which are privatized. And I mean, you know, I'm not a health expert by any means. You know, I'm a business guy, and you know, I look at it and I think, all right, if you're running a clinic, is it in your best interest, if it's a private clinic, to get people off of this stuff, or is it in your best interest to keep your customers? You know, I'm not going to make any proclamation, but I think you can pretty much figure out that, you know, I guess if I were running a clinic which was there to help people get off of drugs or to assist them with whatever, wouldn't the government be better off to be paying a bonus to these clinics for everybody who successfully graduates from the program? I mean, because pay for success so we can move people in and out of the system. I mean, we do live in this kind of that's our economic system. You know, we're not a communist country. I mean, we should be able to pay for success, shouldn't we?
Yep.
And wouldn't that be a good model, a better model than just, you know, sustaining the same old thing year after year?
Well, definitely the methadone clinics have had their time to study to see if they can, with their perpetual cash cow system of keeping somebody on methadone all their life, is that raising them up so that they can stabilize their lives and get their stuff together? Is it working like that? Or is it just, like I say, a perpetual cash cow where the person doesn't raise themselves because of the stabilization, they're just hooked on meth at Dolan instead, right? Yeah, a deep study on the cost-benefit analysis of methadone clinics would be appropriate probably right about now.
Yeah. Unfortunately, our healthcare system, I mean, I have to agree with you know, what I hear from the nursing professionals and the other people saying that the system is broken. Is probably not a bad conclusion when you have a look at, you know, like it's the enormous cost of the healthcare system. And I mean, I realize a lot of those costs have to do with the expense of what Big Pharma is offering to people. And I mean, while we're on the subject of Big Pharma, I'm always astounded when I listen to the American news how in the United States they've been successful in suing these companies that helped create the opioid crisis. I have yet to hear any on a Canadian jurisdiction get millions of dollars from Big Pharma for the opioid crisis in this country.
I think they're still working on tobacco.
And you know, I keep thinking, how is it the Americans, you know, I mean, they got it right. I mean, they're, not that they've necessarily solved the problem, but at least some states have gotten hundreds of millions of dollars that they can put back into the system to care for the people who were affected by the opioid crisis. But you don't hear about that anywhere in this country, not in any province or any jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not aware of the fact that anybody's even got a nickel from those same companies that were promoting the same product in this country. So I keep thinking, like, I mean, I know that our neighbors to the south are more likely to sue each other than we are. They seem to be in a more litigious society. But you have to wonder what's wrong with the Ontario government, let's say, for example. And even during this election, getting back to the election, I don't hear any party saying, we get elected, we're going to sue Big Pharma, like what happened in the United States, and get some monies to help treat people who've been affected by these opioids. And I mean, you know, people who were legitimately injured and had to go on you know, some kind of a pain relief, they got trapped because of the highly addictive quality of these drugs. And they've cost our healthcare system a lot of money and destroyed lives of people who you wouldn't even think would be caught in the trap of being addicted to drugs. I mean, they're just a terrible thing.
I can only imagine the federal government and the provinces probably gave Big Pharma a pass, some type of legal get out of lawsuit for free thing like Ontario did for the long-term care, privatized long-term care did. You know, sign off on responsibilities, and I bet you, if we look deep enough,
you could be right, because I mean, why in this country
yeah,
haven't there been any suits? We keep hearing about the hundreds of millions of dollars. In fact, wasn't there some family that was almost prosecuted in the United States that owned one of those companies?
oh yeah,
over knowingly distributing this stuff when they knew how addictive it was?
yeah, and they cut a deal so that they couldn't get their riches taken. I mean, they only bankrupted or partially bankrupted the company. Yeah, I don't want to mention their names, but yeah, we need more teeth when we go after these things and not give them a pass, right? I think Canada's a little bit light on that.
Yeah. It makes no sense to me, but anyway, I mean, who knows, maybe it has to do with the fact that in the United States they have a privatized healthcare system all the way, and they're more likely to be treating it as business to business rather than government to business.
Well, there's something to that. I'm sure there's a lot to their justice system that ours doesn't have. Some things are good. I'm glad we don't. I hate to be as litigious as they are. Wouldn't be able to breathe without having a lawyer, and who wants one of them around all the time, right? Yeah, there's no big wedge issue this election, eh? Even though you'd think there would be.
In the provincial election?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I guess, I mean, if you take a look at, the COVID situation, where about the only complaint that you had from the opposition was that, that the government wasn't tough enough locking down stuff. Now we've begun to recognize that, and I mean, it was understandable because in the early days of COVID, nobody really understood, the goings on, and now we've had more experience with it, and these new mutations seem to be tamer to some degree, although there's still, there are still people dying, unfortunately, from COVID.
Very virulent, but not as deadly.
Yeah, not as deadly. I mean, the one thing I have to say about Doug Ford that I respected about him as a leader, I actually marveled at the fact when I'd see him on TV and he would say, well, I think we made a little mistake with this. We're going to have we have to have another look at this. We're sort of learning as we're going, and we've tried this, and we didn't have all of the answers, so now we're trying to do the best we can, and there was the balance working with the science table or whatever. And I thought that was quite unique because you didn't see that from Mr. Trudeau in Ottawa, and I don't recall any other politician ever saying, I think we've made some mistakes, but we're learning from this and we're going to change some stuff.
I didn't mind him so much when he was humble.
Yeah, I mean, he's changed character now in the election. He's out full gangbuster. But I have to say that I appreciated that aspect of stuff when that was going on, because I thought, well, that was fair. I mean, you could understand that. And I know he's really been hammered. I know that Andrea Horvath took a run at him at the debate here at the Capitol Center about, he kept saying he was going to put this iron ring around the long-term care, the rest of it. And of course, she gave him a couple of little shots about that, because it didn't really work that well. But I mean, you and I both know that people who go into long-term care, you know, they're very vulnerable to, I mean, if there's a flu epidemic or whatever. And I mean, let's face it, the unfortunate truth is, and it's one of the reasons I wouldn't want to ever go into long-term care, is because you know there's really only one way that you're actually getting out of there, right? I mean, once you've gone, you're in long-term care, you know that you're close to the end, unfortunately.
Last stop on the old
Yeah.
bus trip.
Yeah, it's the last stop, exactly.
Yeah, well, he does get full marks for the beginning of the pandemic. His humility at the time was refreshing in the political landscape. But that luster has worn off, I imagine.
Well,
a lot of people anyways.
yeah, but they're in election mode.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and it's understandably, and I mean I mean, let's face it, the old adage, I mean, people who are a little skeptical, and I'm one of them, which is called, say what's necessary in order to get elected and then do what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And that just seems to be the way it works, and I mean, that's the price of democracy. We all know that democracy is not the most efficient form of government. I mean, we know that a benevolent dictator would be the best way to run any country. The problem is we could never agree on who the benevolent dictator should be.
And they don't stay benevolent.
That's right, because in order to keep power, and once they're challenged, that sort of goodness of benevolence goes down the drain. In order, you know, the old saying, power corrupts and absolute power is totally corrupt. Yeah.
I think corruption happens when a benevolent power tries to keep power.
Yeah, so I mean, we struggle through our democracy, and I mean, I know that, you know, especially if you see some of the stuff that's on the internet, there are a lot of people who are very disappointed and concerned about the freedoms that were lost, and the astounding things that happened in this country because of COVID and protests. And I mean, I think the most astounding thing, in my view, was when the federal government moved in and locked people's bank accounts who actually made donations to the truckers' convoy.
I think they only did that to people that were directly involved with it.
Well, I don't know how far spread it was, but even just the fact that the federal government, over a social issue, which is basically, you know, or a social political issue, because it was a political issue, could go into someone's bank account, is not something that is welcome in a free and open democratic society.
No, it's not welcome.
You know, I mean, it's not like, you know, to some degree, if you know, I mean, even if you take a look at that truckers' convoy, and I know they aggravated a lot of people in Ottawa, especially with, you know, when they were honking the horns and this, that, and the other thing, but just compare that to what would go on if that was in the United States.
Well, the way I look at it is that it got broken up without anybody getting shot and killed. So going a little bit too far with the bank account thing with organizers, I'm not sure about some of the, from what I read, people that just donated didn't get their bank accounts frozen. Maybe some large donors, people very closely connected to the organizers. From what I understood, it was the organizers that they had on their list that got impacted. And from what I could tell, backgrounds from those people, they had intentions that were not democratic. So, screw them, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I mean, I guess it's interesting because if you take a look at what people were charged with, I
Yeah,
mean, they were charged with, you know, conspiracy to commit mischief and mischief. I mean, really, those are not serious charges.
I don't know, how do you get them out of the place that they're hunkered down and saying they're not leaving until they get their way, and you got borders crossings that are going up and everybody's talking about more. I don't know how else you would end something like that. I wouldn't put up with it.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't.
Well, of course, you see, I mean, Toronto handled it because they saw the experience of what happened in.
Yeah, they didn't get, they dealt with it before it got entrenched.
Yeah, I mean, they handled it. And, you know, there's no question it was a very interesting demonstration of power. Did it achieve anything? It's hard to know. And I mean, it'll be interesting, you know, when, you know, if you were studying history 10 years from now, you can just picture, you know, high school history or university and Canadian history, you know, writing a paper on the great truckers' boycott in Ottawa, and what came out of it and what didn't come out of it and what changes were made. I mean, let's face it, when they enacted that serious act, it wasn't for very many days.
Well, you got a lot of work done.
Not very
Well, we're
much.
doing an interview.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's kind of like work. We're wrapping it up.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, let's end it there,
Okay,
and we'll talk again more often, a couple weeks maybe,
okay,
when I get back from fishing.
all right, yeah.
Then we'll have some election results to talk about. And then we'll talk about whether or not you're running for council. I've heard two different things. You're thinking about it, and you said you weren't going to, so which is it?
Well, I'm not going to run.